Aloha, my name is Dr. Fisher, and today I'm going to be talking to you about reading strategies. My students asked me to share with you some of the things that they found helpful, and those suggestions were to give yourself permission to slow down and read at a speed that you need to understand. The other thing is to read and understand the prompt fully. So then when you're reading, the first thing that my students suggested that helped was that they read everything one time through just to understand it. Then they read the prompt and all of the answers, choices that they have, and then they go back to the text and read it a second time with that question in mind, looking for pieces of evidence. And as they find the pieces of evidence to answer that question, they start highlighting those pieces of evidence. So the second and third time that they go through the text, really they're looking for those pieces of evidence. And the reason why it's the second and third time is because the second time they found the pieces of evidence, then they go back to their choice questions and they need to narrow down their choices. So one thing that they recommended I talk to you about is that they can eliminate things that are not discussed in the text. But there is possibility that people are trying to trick you in the questions that they ask or the answers that they give you to choose from, where it might be that two answers are correct, but you have to pick the best of the two. And although that seems daunting, you can actually do it very easily because you just go back to what you highlighted. Now you're on the third time looking, you're seeing what was mentioned the most. And whatever that was mentioned the most, that becomes the better of the two choices that were left. Staying wide awake, one of the things that my students found interesting was this idea that your brain is a muscle and that muscles get fatigued and tired, and that when you're starting to feel tired and your mind's wandering or you're getting sleepy, the one thing you can do that I taught them to do is to gently lift your feet off the floor under the desk. And so you bring your knees up off of the chair, and that engages your abdominal muscles, which wakes you up. So it looks something like this. So I'm doing it right now. Oops, I pushed the button. I'm doing it right now. And when your abs are going, ow, you do start to wake up. And you don't have to keep them up the whole time, just enough to wake yourself up. And what I'm showing right now that I'm doing is I'm not lifting my legs up like this, straight. I'm lifting my legs up this way, knees up. All right, and that wakes you up. Also, when you are reading, so that's what that lifting your legs up would look like, you kind of need to convince yourself that you care. So my students found that interesting in that they would think about their own thinking and they would be monitoring their thinking, and when if they thought, oh geez, this is boring, how many pages is this, that they would then say to themselves, okay, I need to convince myself that I care. I'm going to be reading about how fire was discovered, and I need to care about that. I'm going to be reading about the planets, and I now need to care about that. I'm going to be reading about cells, and or whatever it is, economics, I'm going to care about that. So the students wanted to experience how to make themselves care just by, and wanted examples of that. And I said, really, you're shouting in your head, wow, this is fascinating, this is amazing, because your brain is really powerful. And you can convince your brain that you care about something by just firing the right neurons. Here's a fun trick to do. So here's how powerful the brain is. If you can make your body act like you're interested in it, one thing that you could possibly do is take the pencil that you have at the test, because if you put it in your teeth, all of a sudden your brain starts to wake up because you feel happy about what it is that you're doing. So I'm telling you, it works. It's so weird. Like, I'm not upset right now, but okay, I'm going to try to be forlorn for a second. When I put this in my teeth, the motion of my face making that motion starts to convince my brain that I'm happy. And they actually did some tests, and they did it with chemicals, and they found not chemicals, but from the chemicals that are in your bloodstream to find out whether or not it really did work and whether or not using a pencil between your teeth made you feel happy. There's a whole study on it that you can look up. But that's one suggestion that you can do in order to just convince yourself that you care, is to open your eyes big, bite on a pencil for a second, and then keep reading, because it will engage you. All right, you want to bring your own pencil though. Okay, so, and know that you have been reading your whole life. You can do this. You will be successful at the reading portion. As long as you read everything, of course you're going to be successful. You go back and find the answer, of course you're going to be successful. What are some of the things that we do with our Common Core State standards? So we look for text evidence. Our answers should always be supported with details from the text. When we're identifying key details, we pay attention to things that are repeated, strong descriptive language. Whenever we're summarizing, we know that we're being asked, if we're asked to summarize something or look for a summary on something, and choose a summary, that it's shorter than the original, it uses your own words, no quotes from the text, it's all the main ideas in the text, and it's in sequential order. We also can practice finding central ideas just by looking at what a passage is mostly about, what lesson, message, moral is in the story, and we can look for signal words like because, therefore, in order to find that cause and effect. We also pay close attention to context clues because if we're trying to understand what led us to an inference that we made or a conclusion that we draw, that what we're doing is looking for those context clues. What words made me feel this way or believe this? And I love breaking down words. Sometimes you're asked to identify, like, what is the prefix blank mean in this word? And then you're like, I don't even know that word. I don't know what it means. I have no idea. So one of the strategies that my students would use is think about a word that you do know if you didn't know that word. So for example, this is unpredictable. If I was trying to understand what the word un meant in unpredictable, and I didn't know what unpredictable meant, then I would go, what else do I know starts with un? Unbelievable? That means not believable. Unorganized? Unorganized? Not organized? Okay, so it means not. All right, not. See, I could choose that because I found words that I did know. So don't be afraid when you see a word that you don't know. Just find other words that have the prefix or the suffix in order to figure out what the meaning of that word is. And of course, we want to understand word relationships, and that we know that we have tone and connotation and denotation. Connotation is the emotional connection of the word, like the house versus home. House feels cold, home is more warm. That's the connotation of that word. And we also use the word nuance of the word, so the subtle differences in the meanings of words. Denotation, which is not on here, but denotation is the strict dictionary definition of a word. We also look closely at clues. We pay attention to what the author is implying rather than just what is stated. We use text evidence always to back up our quotes and our paraphrases. Whenever we are looking for evidence, we get text evidence and we use that to back up our inference. So what conclusion did we draw? Well, here's the details that led me to this. And we also know how to compare how things are similar and contrast how they differ. We analyze the author's purpose and the author's claims, and we look to see what the author's trying to persuade the reader, and if it's believable, credible, is it well supported, logical. And of course, I already talked about how to summarize. And remember that when you are shorter than the original, use your own words, all main ideas in sequential order, only the facts, no emotions. And using figurative language in your writing is really going to elevate it to a much higher level. So here is a rap song that I created for literary devices.
Price's figurative language. Allegorical characters, settings, or actions have ideas or moral qualities represented by abstractions. Allusion refers to something outside the world, like a character, story, or event from another book. Analogies are comparisons made between things to show how they're alike or different. Foreshadow is the use of hints and clues in the text. Foreshadow suggests what may happen next. Hyperboles are exaggerations. Hyperboles are extravagant creations. They're not meant to be taken literally, like when it said, "I waited an eternity." Idioms are peculiar to a people, a dialect we've known, like when Americans say, "Kill two birds with one stone." Imagery uses senses to paint pictures in your head. Lists of words strung together like squeaky, lumpy beds. Irony is something that has a surprising twist, like turning into an ogre after Fiona and Shrek kissed. A motive generally contributes in some way to the theme of a short story, novel, poem, or play. Onomatopoeia is a word that reflects its own voice. Sounds out words like, "This beat be bumpin', bumpin'," or "She had boom boom in her voice." What's personification? Figuratively, non-humans get human qualities. Sarcasm uses humor to mock a person, action, or thing, like saying he's brilliant when he messed up everything. Satire is a literary genre or form. It attacks follies and vices to bring about reform. A symbol is something with a meaning larger than its own. Synonyms and antonyms are used for comparisons.
Okay, so you can add figurative language, and you do need to be able to identify the use of figurative language and the effect that it has on the audience. Also, we are identifying key connections when we're looking for similarities and differences. Author's purpose. The purpose, is it persuasion, information, entertainment? Text structures, that's the order in which the text is written. Time, compare, and contrast, cause and effect, and description. And an interesting note, you can actually have one paragraph have a different purpose than the next paragraph. Our text structures change throughout a piece of writing. Analyze text features, headings, subheadings, bold words, charts, captions. I love whenever I see a table or a chart. My students loved them also because we would stop and we would analyze the chart and look at it, but we knew that if there was a chart, obviously it has to have a meaning and has to help us with the meaning of whatever the text is. So we would spend time looking at that chart and trying to guess the importance of the chart and what inferences we could draw from looking at the chart. And we always explain our explanation with evidence. Word choice and tone we already talked about. Context clues we talked about, and word choices we also talked about. So that leads us to one more recap about when you're taking the reading section of any test, whether you're going to take the College Board SAT, the end of year test, it doesn't matter what test you're taking, iReady test, we have diagnostics throughout the year. Whenever you're taking a reading test, if you follow some of these suggestions, you'll do better on that section. So I made a nice sloth sounding rap for you about reading strategies. So here we go.
Reading strategies. Dr. Fisher gives advice when you read. Remember, read to understand, not for speed. First, convince your mind that you care. Stay engaged, be fully aware. Read like a sloth, slow with care. But think like a detective, search for answers everywhere. Read one time through to understand, then a second time with the questions in hand. If you get tired, it's time to wake up. Remember our trick to lift your feet up. Persevere, keep reading, and don't give up. For every choice, check the text. Go find the proof, don't guess. Don't get tricked by answers that seem true. Go find the best answer, it's up to you. Underline the proof, which answer has more. That's the correct answer, that'll raise your score. Don't give up, don't rush, don't guess. Go back and double check every answer on a test. Reading is something you can do. Just take your time and think it through. Dr. Fisher's advice for how to read. Remember, read to understand, not for speed. Convince your mind that you care. Stay engaged, be fully aware. Read one time through to understand, then a second time with the questions in hand. For every choice, check the text. Go find the proof, don't guess. Don't get tricked by answers that seem true. Go find the best answer, it's up to you.
Right. All right. So that ends our discussion on reading. Have a great day. Bye.